Hello and welcome to another edition of the Pace and Space podcast. My name is Sean Barnard here with my guy Sam Oshtry right here on Pick Swap Media on social, wherever you're checking us out on Twitter, live streaming anywhere, YouTube. Make sure you're subscribing. We got a lot to get into. That Sam Oshtry, it has been a little bit, my friend, that we got through the holiday stretch, had some busy things popping up, so had to take a bit of a step back. But the NBA world does not stop, so we got plenty to get into today. How we doing, my friend?
I'm great. We haven't been on a little bit since before Christmas. It feels like forever ago. The story was the Spurs dominating the Thunder. Now it looks like anybody can beat the Thunder. So we got a lot to talk about. So let's get into it.
Yeah, Thunder 6-6 over their last 12. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and do you know what their net rating is across that, or where they rank amongst the league across that stretch?
Probably around league average.
Fourth in the league still, so maybe a little bit of variance, maybe a little bit of bad luck. We will see, but we'll get into the Thunder conversation.
Speaking of that, their net rating is actually still on pace to be the best in NBA history.
Yeah,
And the best ever is the 95-96 Bulls at 13.4, I believe it is. And then the last year's Thunder team is the second best ever, and they had a 12.8 net rating. But this Thunder team is still on pace. Even though they've been slipping up, they're still on pace. But let's not get out of order. We're going to get to the Thunder lead.
that's right. And we did not get a chance to watch the dismantling by the Charlotte Hornets against the Thunder last night because you and I were in the building for the Denver Nuggets versus Philadelphia 76ers. Now, we did not get the MVP showdown between Nikola Jokić and Joel Embiid as Jokić was naturally ducking the Sixers star, but it did not matter from the Nuggets' perspective as their shorthanded squad with 118.3 average points per game sidelined due to injury and rest took down the Sixers. Your initial takeaways were what, Sam Oshtry?
It's the old Doc Rivers theory, and he's said it for years, as much as people hate hearing that name around this town. He said it for years that he would rather play a team at full strength than without their star or their key players, because once your team sees that, they're going to take their foot off the gas. They're going to play down to the competition. They're not going to have as much energy and be as amped for the game. And that's exactly what you saw from the opening tip-off.
Yeah.
I said to you the first couple possessions when we were sitting next to each other that it looked like Embiid was just BSing out there. Like it was just one of these like fun scrimmage type games or whatever. And that was the attitude they have. And look, like that's a G League squad for the Nuggets. I mean, I tweeted it yesterday, but their top 7 guys in the rotation were out. 118 points per game were out for the Nuggets. So it really was a G League squad. Most of those guys get a lot of reps in the G League. But they're all great basketball players. That's the point. It's like anybody can beat anyone on any given day if you don't appreciate and bring the proper effort to a game. And that's what happened. It's like the most classic Sixers loss ever. They have some momentum. They're playing well. They're healthy. And then they suffer the worst loss this season. A massive upset as 14-point favorites.
Yeah, 100% there. And that is probably the most frustrating part to me is I'd finally hit a new gear on the Sixers outlook, man, that we're talking several big boy victories, beating the Knicks twice, keeping the Mavericks at an arm's length in back-to-back games, beating the Grizzlies in overtime on a VJ Edgecombe game winner. Like the vibes were sky high right here. And this was a little bit of a wake-up call. But I don't think this is one of those like change the way you view the Sixers team or this season. It's a bad loss. It happens throughout the span of the season. It happens to every team. Once again, the Thunder got dismantled by the Hornets last night, but certainly frustrating. And I will say it is a theme that now has gone on for years, that it is sort of a lack of seriousness from the Sixers team, that they can go toe-to-toe with the championship contenders on any given night. They also can lose to the dregs of the league and the worst teams that they do face. And I think last night was a clear example of them not getting up for it. And shout out to the Nuggets that they did make them pay the price.
I'm with you that I'm not like looking at this game as a worrisome sign or anything. They've been playing well and they're healthy for now. And their offense looks really good when those their big 4, you could call them, are on the floor together. So there's been a lot of positive that they had over the last couple of weeks, especially that big Knicks win over the weekend. And then you just have a game like that. It's so it's hard to like, or you lose all the momentum in a way. And then you have a really bad Wizards team who's actually been playing well recently, like 6-5 in the last 11, but a bad Wizards team nonetheless coming into Philly where it's like your focus and effort has to be on a whole nother level for that game Wednesday night. I do want to say, just we're going to talk about the Sixers at large and some big picture stuff, but that was, and I'm a big Nick Nurse fan. I know half the fan base likes him, half the fan base wanted him fired last year and can sticks by that. I think Nick Nurse is a great coach. I think he's a creative coach. That was one of the worst coach games I've ever seen him coach last night. I didn't understand what he was doing, especially late in that game when they went double big with Adam Bona and Joel Embiid. And look,
Yeah.
the double big lineups have worked to an extent, and I like seeing those two guys on the floor paired together. But he carried it all the way into 1:30 to go in the fourth quarter while he left Paul George on the bench. It made no sense as the Nuggets went zone. And it's
Yeah.
like, George, the exact guy that you want to extend the floor as a shooter and as a wing two in a zone. It's like, what are you doing going double big with Embiid and Bona against the zone? It made no sense. It didn't carry any logic. Then Paul George was not in rhythm late in the game and then into overtime. It didn't make sense why he left Paul George on the bench for so long. It's almost like he forgot that he was even out there or that he was on the bench and Adam Bona was out there. And I mean, it was just a really poor coaching decision. And then Bona had to guard a lot of guys on the perimeter. He closed out on a
Really bad.
and fouled them, and he
Really
was just
bad.
facing guys. It made no sense with that lineup based on how those Nuggets, a lot of their perimeter players were killing you. And it was just one of the dumber decisions that I've seen from Nick Nurse this season and last season.
Yeah, it's really tough to grade Nick Nurse in the overall conversation because of all the factors that he's had to deal with that a head coach really should not. When you talk about the injury availability, how much the roster has changed on a night to night, like Nick Nurse is figuring out what he's got with this team at the same way that we all are of how good is this Sixers team really, what does work. But I'm in agreement with you that driving home last night, it felt like for the first time this season, like that was a testament to David Adelman straight up out coaching Nick Nurse in that entire game. And the Paul George, to me, that thing is the least excusable part of it, that he was subbed out of that game with 7:40 remaining. He came back in with a minute 30 left on the clock here. It was a 4-point lead by the Nuggets at both portions of that. So I understand it's a net rating of 0. They're like a plus minus of 0 for it. But I felt like, to me, they sort of lost the game in that stretch. That Paul George, I understand that he's just as controversial with the Sixers fan base and probably more critics than even Nick Nurse has right there. But I think Paul George has been pretty fine this year, man. Like, I've been really encouraged by the version of him. And particularly a game like last night, it's not like they were getting killed on the boards. They out-rebounded the Nuggets 42-38. Like, this was a situation where I thought it would be far more beneficial to have a more switchable guy, a guy that can go and get a bucket. And I like Bona. I like these two big man looks in the right situation. It didn't feel like it all was to me last night. I didn't get it from the matchup.
It also feels like Nick Nurse never uses his timeouts late in the fourth quarter that he has. And look, a lot of fans are often like, oh, you didn't call a timeout. This was such a stupid decision. Oh, they went on a 12-0 run and you didn't call a timeout. And I think fans often believe that the timeout is going to solve all these issues or anything and really stop all the momentum. And a lot of times it doesn't. But it does feel like Nick Nurse doesn't call or use timeouts in critical moments. And because of that, this is such a weird thing to criticize, but he might be the worst timeout caller in the NBA. And it's like, it's not really something you think about when you think about who's a good coach and we're going to hire this coach. Oh, is he a good timeout caller? But when you think about it, he is. You go back to that Knicks series
That's what I was about
2 years ago where he didn't call the timeout in time and he just kind of like does this instead of like charging at the refs and is really aggressive with it. And then earlier this year, I forget which game it was. Maybe you remember, but he called a timeout. It was in the ref's face. They should have seen it.
That one was a referee thing. That was
it was, but at the same time, it's like for some reason these refs always miss Nick Nurse's timeouts, and maybe it's because the refs aren't looking to him because he's not typically a guy that uses them in the fourth quarter in these moments because he just hasn't. And it's a weird thing, but it's another Nick Nurse thing that kind of just bothered me last night, and it's just a trend with him. He just doesn't use timeouts when he has them. He leaves the game with a lot of them.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. And by the way, they did not go to the timeout for that final possession last night at the end of the fourth quarter. They ran the exact same set that they ran against the Grizzlies that resulted in the VJ look. The Denver defended it better, that the shot was not there, the kick out to VJ.
Well, let me say on that, and I don't mind them not going to timeout there. I like letting the guys play versus
I'm okay
going to a timeout, getting a set defense. But let me say on that, Maxey went into that action, or I don't know if it's VJ's fault, whatever it was, but they went into that action way too late with 3 seconds left. Maxey crossed that court with 8 seconds left. And they didn't go into that action till 3 seconds left. You got to get to that action way quicker. It was just kind of a debacle in that final possession from the Sixers.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement there. No argument. It was interesting to me. It feels like to me like Nick Nurse has been branded as the basketball mad scientist, this X and O's guy. a lot of the stuff they run, man, is pretty basic. Like, and the Knicks game, I thought was an excellent version of that they ran a ton of like the empty side pick and roll where you had the three guys in the corner, one guy in the dunker spot there, and they ran a ton of options off it. You created Paul George corner threes, you created two-man action with Embiid and Maxey. Like, that has to be the baseline of their offense right there. But when you watch the tape, it's like the same thing over and over.
To be precise, I mean, everyone's seen that or seen the analysis on that, but they ran that action 7 straight times.
Yeah, like,
whereas the Maxey Embiid,
that's a lot.
But the thing is, it worked. I'm
Yeah.
not faulting anybody for that. The Knicks couldn't stop it. It was the Maxey Embiid empty side pick and roll on the left wing, and they kept setting that step in or Barlow, excuse me, kept setting that step in pin down screen for Paul George to flare to the corner, and VJ was on the wing. And why it was so successful is because the gravity that Joel Embiid creates, what him and Maxey are a great pick and roll duo. They always have been when Embiid's at full health. But the gravity that Embiid creates, where OG Anunoby was the low man for most of that, and he has to he kept coming over and kind of like shielding over to that way because of Embiid's presence and the threat of Embiid. And so it's like sometimes Embiid caught in the mid post, but even when Embiid didn't catch it, Maxey turned the corner. There was one possession, Maxey just got downhill because OG was the low man and shed towards Embiid. There was a couple possessions where Maxey was getting downhill, OG sheds, and Karl-Anthony Towns was in no man's lane. He didn't really move, but he has to guard too because Barlow's setting the step in and Paul George is flaring out and they hit Paul George a couple times as Maxey's coming down the lane, but also they found Barlow on a cut a couple times. So they were really messing up the Knicks with that one action that they were going to time and time again. But it was really because of how lethal Maxey and Embiid are as a pick and roll combo, and how much Embiid is as a threat in the short roll, as getting a catch in the pocket. And how lethal he is. And that kind of shows the gravity of Embiid when he's healthy. So as much as negatives as we're talking about with the Sixers, there have been a lot of positives with this offense over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and you are right about that. And I did want to highlight this comment here. Shout out to Isaac May, I believe here. He says, PG is a leader for us on defense. I agree. Like, that is something that I thought was missing during that stretch in the fourth quarter last night. Love that shout out. And I do want to dig into this conversation about should Maxey be taking the Sixers' last second shot. Now, I'm not a guy who believes it has to be the same guy every game. That I think you can sort of feel the hot hand a little bit. If it's night where Joel's got it, if it's night where Maxey's goes, if it's a throwback night where for Paul George is going for 40, I'm cool with opening things up. I guess my first question to you, Sam Oshtry, is should I feel good or bad about this? That last night driving home, my takeaway was I think VJ Edgecombe was the best player on the floor for the Sixers last night.
The numbers back that up. You know what
Yeah.
VJ Edgecombe's shooting on clutch threes this year?
It's over 60%,
It's
isn't it?
58%.
Whew.
You know what Tyrese Maxey's shooting on clutch threes this year?
30.
22%.
Oof.
So the numbers back it up. Like VJ, he's just on his 3-pointer shooting 38%. He's shooting 38% from 3 on the year, but 58% in the clutch. It feels like he's shooting 100%. Every time that dude shoots a 3 in the final few minutes of a game, it feels like it's going in. And they trust him. He has the ultimate confidence. Talk about that ghost action they ran a few games ago to get VJ the win. Then Maxey trusts him to make the right read. Maxey's your best player. I'm still going to Maxey every single time to take the final shot because he's your best player and the ball is going to be in his hands and he's always going to be your best player. As clutch as VJ's been, I always want the ball to be in my best player's hands, even as Maxey develops. Like maybe he becomes a better clutch player as his career progresses. And that's fine. You can make a lot of mistakes in the clutch right now. I still trust Maxey more than anybody because he's the best player on this team. He's the best shooter on this team. He can create a shot better than anybody else on this team. So I'm still going to Maxey late in games. It just hasn't been there as much as people would have loved over these last couple.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. My biggest critique would be have something a bit more structured than I think is sort of the go-to here. And again, that fourth quarter look that they did have, and of course, I wasn't even that mad about the last look that Maxey did have. It was an awkward sort of falling away floater, but he's the best floater, has the best floater in the NBA that I can kind of live with that being the shot overall. But my critique, to tie it back to the Nick Nurse conversation, it does feel like a lot of times we get into this shot in particular, it's a lot of just Maxey go cook someone. And I need a little bit more than that, whether that is setting a screen for him, running him off a pin down, creating a look, give your guy an advantage in a way where he doesn't just have to do it all himself. And there's so many ways where you can do that with Tyrese Maxey. So I don't have a problem with Maxey.
Here's the alternative is Joel Embiid getting touches late in the fourth quarters. And even when Joel Embiid's been at his best MVP type seasons, I don't want him getting those touches. And he shied away from those touches a lot. I think about the Boston series, game 6 a few years back, game 7. He'll shy away from those touches. I don't want Embiid to have those touches. I'd much rather it be Maxey's operation late in games than Embiid or running everything through Embiid at the mid post.
And to defend him a little, there's also just more like ways you can attack it from a guard perspective that it's just easier to defend from a defensive standpoint when you are talking about a big man who wants to operate sort of in the mid-range or post, when you can get a guard to go downhill and sort of create stuff off that. But nonetheless, a missed opportunity to pick up a victory last night by the Nuggets. Your boy Nikola Jokić is obviously sidelined for the foreseeable future. At least a month that we were talking about. What was your immediate reaction to that? I know texting live, I thought it was going to be worse than the actual outcome and do think it's a bit of a bullet dodge. But what's your feeling about that from the Nuggets perspective?
They definitely dodged a bullet. You swore it was going to be an ACL. And I told you I've never prayed in my life, and I was praying that it wasn't going to be. And that's because there's no player I'd want to get injured less than Nikola Jokić in the entire NBA. There's no one who I love watching more offensively than Jokić. I think he's maybe the best offensive player of all time, and I think he's that great. And so I don't want him to get injured because I think he's that fun to watch ever. So, and he's a guy who's really durable. He's not a guy that rests at all or gets injured. He plays a lot, and as much as people make fun of his weight and his lack of athleticism, he just doesn't get hurt, and he's usually pretty well conditioned. So it was a weird, fluky play. Thank God it was just a hyperextension. He should rest. The thing is, the West is so clunky. It's like they've been 2-2 since he went out. They're probably going to slip up a little bit in the West. So, like, can the Rockets pass them? Can the Wolves pass them? You don't want to get too far down to have to play the Thunder in the second round again. Maybe you avoid the Spurs somehow. I don't know. The West is going to shake out, but you don't want to fall too down the standings. But at the same time, you got to make sure Jokić is 100% healthy by the time he comes back. And that probably won't be until after the All-Star break.
Yeah, obviously disappointing whenever a guy gets injured like that. I mean, I wish I could have seen the 49th best player of all time play in person last night again, but the stars did not align for that.
That's what I was excited. I've never seen him play in person. Probably the guy I'd want to see him play in person more than anybody. And I've never seen him play in person.
I did have a chance to see him during the heart of the MVP debate. Jokić play Embiid and watched Embiid give him 47 and be the better player than him by every single metric in that matchup, which was a blast for me in that game. So I have been
last
lucky.
Century. When was that?
2023. That was right there.
It was like last century.
Nonetheless, it was nice to see. I will point out here, the Nuggets are 2-2 without Nikola Jokić. I think have looked pretty confident that they pushed the Cavs to the wire in one of those losses. Obviously, a bad one to the hands of the Brooklyn Nets with it. Should we make a case that maybe this team is better than like they're giving credit? That Jokić is obviously incredible, but this is not just a one-man unit, that this Denver Nuggets roster has talent across the board?
Nope, that would be the dumbest case ever made. That team was awful last night. That was one of the worst NBA rosters you could put together. The one the Nuggets put together last night
at full strength. I
think the Sixers 2015 team that won 10 games is better than that team last night.
Well, that's incorrect.
So no, there's no case to be made after 4 games when nobody's really played. Like Jamal Murray only sat last night. Aaron Gordon and Christian Braun came back against the Nets on Sunday. I believe it was Sunday or Saturday, and they lost that game to the Nets. So, no, Jokić is everything for that team. Jamal Murray's having an unbelievable season. He should be an all-star. Yeah. So, hopefully, he can carry enough. But no, this team is all about Jokić. And last night was definitely not a reflection of that, because that was just a bunch of guys who were playing like they have absolutely nothing to lose because they don't have anything to lose, playing loose. And they were unbelievable. Like, talk about Jalen Pickett. I mean, we could talk about Peyton Watson, Hunter Tyson, all these guys. Jalen Pickett was 100% on step back threes. The 9th player in NBA history to shoot 100% on step back threes with a minimum of 5 attempts. That's unbelievable. I mean, he was just pulling, and he was making everything yesterday. It was just one of those crazy games where guys who aren't in rotations and usually shouldn't be in rotations just are playing like they have nothing to lose. So no, I'm not making any grand takeaways, as much of a hater that you want to be about 4 games, and certainly not about last night.
Yeah, and last night is sort of a separate conversation because they rested everybody. But I do think when that team has Jamal Murray, has Aaron Gordon, you can run down the list of actual talent that they do have. maybe we make a case that most valuable should maybe be viewed in a slightly different situation. I do hope Jamal Murray makes an all-star game here because I want this Nikola Jokić has never played with an all-star stuff to be dropped. That fraudulent statement right there, misleading statement.
It's not misleading. It's a fact. I mean, it's a fact.
Yeah.
Which all-stars he played with?
I mean, he's played with DeAndre Jordan's been an all-star. We've got
DeAndre Jordan,
yeah,
the 15th man on the bench.
The honest push right here is Jamal Murray has been an all-star caliber player several seasons that he's played with Nikola Jokić. Now, it has not aligned due to injuries, primarily him not playing enough games and all that side of conversation. But Jamal Murray has straight up carried this roster for a couple playoff games and even series, I was going to say. So he doesn't play with nobodies is my overall point.
Yeah, he won a championship. Jamal Murray was incredible in that championship. You can't win a championship playing with nobodies. You need help. But most guys win championships are playing with multiple perennial all-stars. The fact that Jokić isn't says everything about him and his impact.
Yeah, well, we will see. We'll see what the Nuggets do look like when they do come back. Let's stick on the MVP conversation right here. So the being out for a month is going to make it a little bit hairy for Jokić reaching this 65-game minimum. Going to be interesting to see. Putting that to the side and including him in this conversation, if the season were to end right at this very moment, Sam Oshtry, who do you think the MVP of the NBA should be?
At this very moment, it's still Jokić because I always had Jokić. It's only been 4 games. Jokić is going to be eliminated from the conversation because he's probably not going to play enough games. So I'm just going to discount and exclude Jokić from the conversation. It's still Shai. And let's not overcomplicate it just because Jokić is probably going to be out of the race. It was always between Jokić and Shai. So now that Jokić is out, don't try to make someone else, put someone else in it just to make it an entertaining race. And I don't know who you're going to make the case for. Jaylen Brown has a case, but Shai is still, if you had Shai before, you can't switch off Shai because Shai is still the best player on the best team in the NBA, by far the best team. I mean, we're talking about the Thunder who have been slipping up, and we're going to get to them in a little bit. There's still 4 games ahead of the Spurs in first place in the West. So, and they still have the best net rating in the NBA, best defense in the NBA. Shai has been everything for them. He's so consistent. Even last night, he only scored 21, was really inefficient against the Hornets, didn't play that much because they got blown out. You thought the 20-point streak might end, but no, he scored 20 plus points for like 110 something games. He's so consistent. He is the best isolation player efficiency wise in the NBA. He's so great coming off ball screens. There's nothing he can't do. And he's elevated his efficiency and his 3-point shooting this year. Like his 3-point shooting volume has gone up, but his 3-point shooting accuracy has also gone up, which is pretty rare. Usually you sacrifice efficiency for volume. At least a little bit. And that hasn't been the case at all for Shai. So he's been by far the best player in the NBA. There's no reason to overcomplicate it. He's the MVP and will be, assuming Jokić doesn't play enough games. But I don't know who you're going to go with here. I'm interested.
Yeah, I don't have a hard argument against Shai. That like my overall expectation is that is likely the guy, and I think he's got a very deserving case. But I will say, if you pin me down right now and say who do I believe should be the most valuable player in the NBA, my answer would be Jaylen Brown, man. He's been straight up incredible. And for the Celtics team, just like the rattle off the raw stats from it, this season he's averaging 29.6 points per game, 6.3 rebounds, 4.9 assists, 1.1 steal. He's leading the NBA in made field goals as well as 2-point attempts, hitting the mid-range at a higher efficiency, and it is translating to team success. The Celtics are now 23-12. They're in second place in the Eastern Conference above your New York Knicks, Sam Oshtry. That we had quite a conversation coming into the season about how crazy you thought it was for me to pick the Celtics to come out of the East. They're right here in the mix right now, and their best player is still working his way back from the Achilles. But in the meantime, Jaylen Brown has blossomed into an MVP candidate in his own right, which I think is going to work out for the better of the franchise in the long haul.
Should we just get into the Celtics now? Because Jaylen Brown definitely is a case. I mean, he's been a top 5 player in the league, no doubt. I don't think he's the MVP when it's all said and done, but you're right.
I asked you this hypothetical off it.
Yeah.
Take Shai off the Thunder and take Jaylen Brown off the Celtics. I think the Celtics are a lottery team. I think the Thunder are still a playoff team.
Probably. But it's tough with the Thunder because what we'll talk about with some of the things with the Thunder is Chet has not been good the last couple of weeks, and Jalen Williams has really not been good since he came back from injury. So as much as we talk about their depth, it hasn't been there this year. Last year, I would certainly say that if you took Shai off the team, they're probably still a playoff team just because their defense, when you can rely on a defense like that, it's unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, you're right about that for sure. But the Thunder are so much better than the Celtics that it's kind of hard to make that case. But let's talk about the Celtics because
Yeah.
are they still your pick to go to the NBA Finals?
Yeah, I'm not switching off it. Well, they've only played better than I expected could be the case since I said that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I thought they were going to be like around the play-in team. I didn't think they were going to go full rebuild or retool, whatever you want to call it, tank mode. A lot of people did, but I thought they'd be a play-in team. I didn't expect this leap from Jaylen Brown. I mean, the guy's been in the league for so long now, and somehow he continues to elevate his game year after year. He's shooting 50% on pull-up twos and 39% on pull-up threes. Last year, that was 40% on twos and 29% on threes. And this is when he's the top of the guy at every scouting report. I mean, there's so much more defensive attention on him now without another creator like Jason Tatum, or even guys like Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis and all these other amazing players that they lose. Like you think about last year and really 2 years ago when they won the title, Kristaps Porzingis post up was the most efficient play in basketball. So like there were so many different things you had to game plan for and stop. And that's just not the case anymore with the Celtics team because of all the guys they lost. But somehow Jaylen Brown's efficiency is still so amazing on his shooting, and he's getting to his spots. Everything he's doing right now is at another level than we've ever seen in his career. And then you talk about his turnovers and his passing, things that people kind of were critical of him throughout his career. His usage rate is at 36, 37%, depending on where you're looking at. It's the third highest usage rate in the NBA behind Giannis and Luka, and it's by far the highest of his career. He's usually sitting around 30% usage rate. Usually you would think that would mean his turnover rate would go up and he would turn the ball over even more, especially for a guy where a lot of the criticism around him is his handle. Yeah. He can't handle the ball. He can't go left. When he dribbles to the left, he likes to turn the ball over a lot. His turnover rate is the same. Despite having such a higher usage rate, his turnover rate is pretty much the same. So on every facet of the game, he's completely elevated himself to a whole new tier. And I did not expect this jump from him at all. He's been absurdly impressive. And he's, of course, the catalyst of the best offense in the league. They were the best offense in the league in December. And I think they're trending towards being the best offense in the league by the time the season ends.
Yeah, no, you nailed it on all of that. And this is the most complete basketball that we've seen from Jaylen Brown. Like he's always been a high impact defender. He's always had stretches where you can see like using his physicality to attack and things like that. But he's leveraging his playmaking more. He's hitting mid-range shots. Every aspect of basketball, he's improved at. And it is kind of wild to see that level. By the way, the Celtics as a whole, across the entire NBA on the season, I was in the net rating weeds today. What do you think they rank as far as net rating?
Across the entire league?
Yeah.
Probably third or fourth.
Yeah, third in the league behind just the Thunder and Rockets. Like there's a lot that indicates
they're better, and they're better than the record even indicates.
Yeah, like there's a lot that indicates this is real what they're doing. A lot of the numbers that I'm kind of looking into right here. I believe in the Celtics team, man. I do think that they have a puncher's chance. And when Jason Tatum comes back and there isn't this expectation of you have to be the guy, like I think there's a world where this works. Are you buying in that the Celtics could make some postseason noise?
I think they could, just because the East is getting weirder and weirder. And look, we're going to get to the Knicks. I'm not backing off the Knicks 1 second, but like the East is getting weirder and weirder. And it feels like the Celtics could really emerge. This isn't some regular season fluke. The thing is, their defense is pretty bad. I mean, it's around league average, but there are nights where they just can't defend. And that's a lot because of the rim protection. They don't have any rim protection when you get rid of 3 centers last year like they did. And look, they've gotten some good minutes from certain guys. But like, you talk about like guys like Hugo Gonzalez has come in and had an impact.
Yeah, stud.
Jordan Walsh was in and out of the lineup. Yeah, but then he had some great games. So it's everybody, and they're getting contributions across the board. But their offense is so good that it might not even matter how average or below average they are defensively. And we talk a lot about the Thunder and how they dominate the possession game. That's exactly what the Celtics are doing. They shoot so many threes. They shoot the second most threes in the NBA, and they make the most threes in the NBA. And then you talk about offensive rebounding, 6th highest offensive rebounding rate. So they're creating so many extra possessions that way. And then they don't turn the ball over. And that's a key. They have the 2nd best turnover rate in the NBA. So when you're crashing the glass, you're not turning the ball over, you're shooting a ton of threes, you're creating extra possessions for yourself, especially when you shoot a lot of threes, and a lot of those threes produce long rebounds, and then you're getting the offensive board for kickouts. Like, this team is just maximizing their roster and this offense every way they can by dominating the possession battle. And it's really impressive to watch right now. Like, you could be right. I was laughing at you in the preseason. I'm not going to pick them. I definitely wouldn't pick them over the Pistons or Knicks. I don't even know if I would over the Sixers in a series if the Sixers are healthy. But you could be right that this team could make a sleepy run. Of course, it all depends on Tatum and what that looks like too.
Yeah, and there's still plenty of ifs attached to this. How they approach the deadline is going to be really interesting to me. Of do they just continue treating this like a full gap year? Do you try and get another big man to give yourself another option right there? What is
I saw a report today that they were making some calls to the Clippers about Zubac.
Which would be very interesting, and that would be a notable like I like Nehemiah Keita, don't get me wrong, but that would be a game-changing addition right there. And by the way, I think Tatum will play some 5 too. They kind of have leaned on that at a pretty regular rate, so a lot of this does work together. Keep your eyes on the Boston Celtics because I do think that they do have a chance this year. Now, to transition down the East before we get to New York Knicks, the team that we also were in disagreement on this summer was the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now they've dropped to 20-17 on the season. They sit in, I believe, 8th place in the Eastern Conference. I was ready to stick a fork in them this summer. I'm even more ready. I think this team is cooked. I think this team is done. I think they need a sizable blow-up type move. Where are you at? Are you finally seeing the light, Sam Oshtry?
So 2 weeks ago, we were texting, and I was telling you got to take your Cavs victory lap because you were right.
Oh, you buying stock again?
I bought a little bit on the dip.
Wow. Okay.
Is there anything wrong with buying a dip?
I mean, there is if it's gonna keep dipping, my friend.
But it's kind of like a tariff that everyone put on the Cavs when Darius Garland came back. And you had to get over those bruises. Like you buy the dip when Trump tariffs everything. You buy the dip when Darius Garland comes back and looks like one of the worst players in the NBA. You buy that dip because you know that's not going to last, and it hasn't lasted. Darius Garland's still having a career worst year in a lot of ways. Worst 3-point shooting of his career, worst field goal percentage of his career, or tied with his rookie season, I believe. So he's looked really inefficient and bad coming off that injury. But the last 2 weeks have been much better. And look, they've won 3 of the last 4. 2 of those wins were over the Suns and the Spurs. So they're playing a little bit better basketball. When Darius Garland gets those turnovers down, his efficiency goes back up. Him and Donovan Mitchell start playing complementary again like they were last season. This team's going to play better, and I think you're already starting to see it in a wide open East. Like they're still hovering. They still could easily have and probably will have a home playoff series in the first round of the East because the East is just that open and bad in a lot of ways. But the Evan Mobley his shooting was kind of worse than to start the season than you would have expected because I thought elite was going to come from him. I thought he was a top 15 player in the league. Haven't seen that type of leap. DeAndre Hunter has been the most disappointing guy on this team. He's a guy who shoots around 40% from 3 the last 2 seasons, and he's shooting 31% from 3 this year. They moved him to a bench role. He had some good games when he was shooting well coming off the bench, but still, like they're just not. Nobody's clicking. Max Strus hasn't even played yet. He's the guy who's going to be coming back, and so
they extended it 4 more weeks. By the way,
did they really? I missed that report.
Yeah, today they said 4 more weeks for Max Strus.
Yeah, it's weird how long he's been out. I believe it was a foot injury though, so you don't want to mess with that. But still, like DeAndre Hunter, I think he's going to start shooting the ball better. I think Darius Garland's going to start shooting the ball better. You know, the Jared Allen Evan Mobley pairing is still iffy a lot of times, and you're probably right that you are going to look to trade Jared Allen at some point. You can probably get decent value for him. I don't know if it's this deadline or next summer if they flame out in the playoffs. So I didn't buy a million shares of the Cavs at the dip, but I bought a little bit, and this Cavs team isn't completely out of it. They're about to match their loss total from last season, which is crazy. But look, you'd rather be playing your best basketball in April than you would in mid-January. So there's a lot of time for the Cavs to clean it up.
Yeah, I just don't think that there's enough that the best version of them cleaned up. I just still don't think moves the meter with things. That I do think Jared Allen is the source of you have to find a way to move him. That you have to give yourself some sort of stylistic different look. And I forget exactly what our disconnect was in the Evan Mobley. You said top 15. I think I said he's not top 50. I think I was too low on that number right there. He's the same exact dude that he came in as a rookie, man. This dude has not.
Okay. See, you just go too far. Same dude he came in as a rookie. Come on, he was strictly when he came in as a rookie. He was strictly a rim protecting big. He had no offensive competence. He's completely improved from that.
He's a little bit better than he is as a rookie, but he gives you the same 18-8, man. This dude has not taken the leaps that he should have at this stage in his career. That I'll stand on.
So I think he took a huge leap from 2 seasons ago to last year, and that's why it was really promising. Like you saw it, and you saw the drives were up, and the finishing around the rim was up, and he had some touch, and he was passing was better at the short roll. All these things that you want from a big, especially a really good defensive big. And the pairing with Donovan Mitchell looked great, and then you thought, all right, maybe I'll go to another level this year, and it just hasn't. And even the 3-point shooting was better last year, and he was shooting more of them. but it just hasn't gone to another level this year like you would have expected. But let me ask you this. Where are you? You always talk about the Allen Mobley pairing. Where are you on the Mitchell Garland pairing?
I like both them as players a ton. I do think it is a situation that like they're a little bit too similar, and I don't think they like, complement each other in that way. It's hard. Like I saw the report a couple weeks ago of like, Darius Garland wouldn't mind having his own team to run and that kind of thing. I don't think you're that Darius Garland. I definitely do not. Like he's not that caliber of talent. I do think Donovan Mitchell can be a 1A guy on a championship, and he's got some pretty like nutty postseason performances that kind of get brushed under the rug.
I feel
Also,
bad. I feel bad for him.
yeah,
He's doing
especially
everything for this team this year.
for sure. And it was the same story in Utah, man. Like he will put on these like Herculean performances, and he's just dragging Rudy Gobert and Evan Mobley and whatever scrubs are behind him to try and find a way to get wins. I also feel bad for him because Donovan Mitchell very much strikes me as like a bright lights, prime time, like some star aura around him type guy. He's played in Utah and Cleveland so far in his NBA career. I kind of think it is best for all parties if the Cavs hit a full reset, see what a Donovan Mitchell trade could potentially fetch you. That's obviously a huge step back as an organization, but I think the steps forward are too significant for them to take for me to believe this can just be a repackaging situation.
Well, I think Donovan Mitchell or Evan Mobley are pieces you're building around, you're staying with. You're not departing those two guys. I think they're going to flame out in the playoffs this year, and you have to have real conversations about what can you get for Darius Garland and Jared Allen in potentially two separate packages. And there's probably a decent market for both those guys, especially there's a lot of teams who need a center. So Jared Allen could have some value there.
Celtics, baby.
Yeah, for sure, especially next year when Tatum is back and they're back to contending again. I think this team's also soft.
Yeah.
And you can talk about the point of attack defense where there's Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, and those two guys just are too small of a backcourt defensively, and teams just knife in the lane. You saw that in the playoffs. But the physicality every year they get into the playoffs, going back to that Knicks series like 3 or 4 years ago, I think it was maybe Jalen Brunson's first year in New York with him and Julius Randle, where the Knicks just bullied them. The Cavs were the more talented team probably, but the Knicks just bullied them and so much more physical with them. And then last year, you had some injuries, but they just always look soft in the postseason where physicality is really amped up. Like if the Cavs play the Pistons in a playoff series, oh my, like it's the physicality that the Pistons are going to show the Cavs. It's going to be off the charts. They won't be able to handle it. So Kenny Atkinson coming in was a great move for their offense, and their offense jumped to the number one in the league last year, and the spacing and the pace and all that stuff they played with was better for the roster, but so much more than that in the playoffs. And this roster, it's just kind of a soft team, and I think you're right. You were early on it last year, and I said give it one more chance, and now you're looking back and you're going, they're probably going to blow it up this offseason, so they might as well have done it last one.
Yeah, and it's two separate coaches that have told us that they're kind of mentally soft and don't have it between the ears for what it takes to be a championship team. I'll also note, and I mean no disrespect to this dude as like a human being, because I think he's a really fascinating guy. I think Jared Allen's like a huge source of that, man. Like I think he's a guy who doesn't play to his size, that he's got some funkiness to him. And like if you're going to do something, you got to change the identity. I do think they need like a bruiser and a guy that can, shake things up a little. I think there's too much deep to fix than it is currently the case right there. But we'll put a bow on the Cavs conversation. I do want to talk about your New York Knicks briefly here. It does feel to me like the Knicks fan base is at a peak frustration of so far we've seen this season, coming off absolutely getting dismantled by the best team in the Eastern Conference, the Detroit Pistons right there. They've had some concerning losses of late. What are you seeing from the Knicks at this current stage of time?
I'm pretty tapped in on Knicks Twitter, for better or worse. And this fan base is unbelievable. I mean, you wouldn't
they're
believe.
Pretty tapped into my Twitter. I'll say that.
That's true. But you wouldn't believe this fan base. They lost 4 straight games. You would think their season just ended. You would think I don't know, someone got bombed or something. The way they treat a loss in the beginning of January to the Pistons. I mean, it's ugly there. There's a lot of things. Let's start with this. And this conversation with both the Knicks and the Thunder.
Okay.
This is the weirdest stretch of the NBA season. I say it every year. From Christmas until the All-Star break, those 6-7 weeks are the weirdest stretch of the NBA season, where it's just like there's a lot of injuries. You see a lot of weird results. Guys are kind of like, especially as end of January comes, they played for 3-4 straight months. They're waiting for that All-Star break to come. The results are coming out. The trade deadline's approaching. Starting to hear rumors. It's just a really weird stretch in the NBA, and you often see a lot of weird results. So I don't really care if a team is great or awful in January, because I think it's the weirdest month January into February of the NBA. So that's to say for the Knicks and the Thunder, I don't really care that they're going through some lulls and bad stretches. Now, there are some glaring issues with the Knicks, and that starts with their defense. Their defense is awful. I mean, they are them and the Pelicans are the only two teams in the league who are in the top 10 in the NBA in rim frequency and 3-point frequency, meaning teams are getting to the rim a ton and shooting a ton at the rim and also shooting a lot of threes. And that's because their point of attack defense is awful. And guys just knife into the lane, get to the rim. When they get to the lane, the defense has to collapse. They kick out for threes. And part of this is Josh Hart hasn't been here the last 5 games, and they've really struggled without him. And he's the heart and soul of that team. And he's a great defender. Obviously, can switch on 1 through 5. Great perimeter on-ball defender. But beyond that, like he's the hustle guy. He's the heart. He is everything to that team. And it's crazy to say, but he really is as valuable as it gets. So when he's on the floor in that starting lineup with him and the other 4 guys that we all know, they're still one of the best teams in the NBA. Their net rating is like 5.5, I believe, 5.5, which would be top 3 or 4 in the NBA. So there's nothing to take away. There is stuff to take away, but to me, it's like you need Josh Hart. You just do.
I'll also note a guy named Karl Anthony Towns has quite a bit to do with that particular stat right there. Any issues with that statement?
Which stat? The defense stat?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you. My whole thing with the Knicks has been they're going to be bad defensively. Like they have to be better than what they've been. And that starts with the point of attack. And that's Josh Hart has to get back. Mikal Bridges, I heard someone theorize this recently, and I think it's true. I think it's a good point. Can't remember who said it, but he's really a better off-ball defender with his off-ball instincts than he is his on-ball defender. I mean, guys kind of kill him and just drive right by him on ball. And you saw that even with Maxey the other night when Maxey or both matchups, Maxey torched him. So I think there's something to that. But yeah, you're right. It's obviously Jalen Brunson is a bad defender. We know that. Karl Anthony Towns, bad defender. So when you have those 2 guys on the floor, for me, it's like your defense just has to be average enough where your offense is so good, but the offense hasn't even been that good. And they're getting away from a lot of their normal principles where Jalen Brunson was playing off the ball and getting off the ball less and being more play finisher rather than play initiator and getting other guys involved. And Karl Anthony Towns has been awful offensively during this stretch. And he's made it pretty known publicly with kind of his comments and just his moping and all that. So there's a lot going on right now with the Knicks, and it's ugly in New York. But there's nothing to really be concerned about. The offense will be fine, and the offense just has to be good enough where it can overcome a lot of the defensive deficiencies, at least to get out of the East.
This is coping, Sam Oshtry. You should be worried. Like, this is real. Like,
I don't care, so I'm not worried. I'm just – they're my finals pick.
I mean, so the Sixers matchup, I'll point out what jumped off the page to me is concerning is like all these individual guys, these are defensive issues that you can't just Band-Aid over. Like what I saw happen a ton in that Sixers game is the Sixers basically isolate, get VJ Edgecombe with Jalen Brunson at his matchup and let him go downhill. And there's no answer for that in Jalen Brunson. Like there's no fix to the size and athleticism discrepancy there. By the way, VJ Edgecombe and Tyrese Maxey, sort of the critique of them is a little bit of a too small of a backcourt, and they're doing this to the Knicks. And you're right, there's no Josh Hart, and that makes a huge difference in the way the whole thing is guarded and the way they match up. But I kind of think all these guys have significant flaws on this Knicks team. Mitchell Robinson, he can rebound the crap out of the basketball. That's about all he can do. Yes, he can get put back dunks, but can you play him at the 5 and force Karl Anthony Towns to then have to play on the perimeter? Karl Anthony Towns can't rim protect if he's going to be a guy that is going to be your 5-man right there. Brunson is so valuable to what they do offensively, but he's always going to be a matchup concern on the defensive end. And I do think Mikal Bridges is a guy I'm willing to say is an overrated defender, dude. He's a good player. He's a good connective piece, but he's not a guy that should be in the conversation for like a first-team stopper or a guy that you want on opposing team's best player. I do think OG is more effective than him, and they have that in their back pocket. But I kind of think that there's more flaws with this Knicks team than anyone wants to acknowledge, and that's why I keep speaking the truth.
They're flawed team. Like we talk about their defense all the time. They're a flawed team. But when the offense is also bad, it accentuates all the defensive problems.
You're right.
The offense can't be as bad as it's been. And it's like some of the stuff I talked about where they're not playing with the pace and that doesn't mean like that they're still towards the bottom of the league in pace when they were playing really well, but that just means like getting into your actions early, getting across half court early, getting Brunson off the ball and then getting him touches on the catch later and getting other guys involved and playing through Karl Anthony Towns as a little bit of a hub and all these handoffs and all these actions that they do. They're just like kind of a step slow offensively. They shot the ball awfully the other night, I believe, against the Hawks. OG Anunoby is in a huge slump. I'm not worried about that even a little bit. He's an unbelievable player, and he's the best defender on the team by far. But he's an unbelievable offensive player too. So he's in a shooting slump. Jalen Brunson's efficiency hasn't been great. The Pistons played with a lot of physicality last night. I was rewatching that game. They just played with a ton of physicality, kind of like they did last year in that playoff series. And the Knicks reverted back to their old habits of Jalen Brunson dribbling the ball, bringing up a million times the floor a million times. And that they just can't, they can't do that. They have to go with their new system and rely on that. And it's a process. Like the Knicks are a team, and their owner made it very clear yesterday that he will be unhappy if they don't make the NBA Finals. He said, we have to make the NBA Finals. So they're a team where right now the regular season results don't matter as much as like the overall process and getting your offense to the point where it won't be as predictable and as stale as it was in the playoffs last year. So if the offense is good enough, the defense won't matter as much. But yeah, you're right. The Karl-Anthony Towns stuff is a problem, but at the same time, the stuff, like, he looks like a worse defender because their guards are letting them get to the rim. So it's not all on him. It's everyone right now. Again, it's January 6th. It's not a lot to be concerned about when the playoffs are still 3-4 months away.
Philadelphia 76ers 2-0 against the New York Knicks on the season, for those of you keeping track at home. I also want to talk about another kind of interesting team in the Eastern Conference, which is the Atlanta Hawks right here. And we got some breaking news from Shams Charania as of yesterday that Trae Young's agents are working with the organization to facilitate a deal, and that the days of Trae Young being a member of the Atlanta Hawks are numbered. The pushback to that is, where is he possibly going to, which I think is a more difficult question to answer than Trae Young's team would probably like to be the case right now. Sam, what was your initial reaction to that report? We've kind of talked about this kind of glowing rifts between him and the franchise for a couple months now, but are you surprised that it broke when it did, and what do you make of that?
My reaction's twofold. Number one, it's that this was inevitable when the Hawks didn't offer him a contract extension. When you didn't offer him a contract extension last offseason, you were kind of giving it a test year, and you kind of always knew that this departure was inevitable because you don't think that he's worth this max deal. So why not trade him last offseason when his value is higher, if you saw this coming, as opposed to now where he doesn't have a lot of value because you already have decided to trade him. You want him off the team by the deadline. So you don't have a lot of leverage in the situation if you're the Hawks. And then you scan around the league, especially mid-season, who's taking him on? He's on an expiring deal. He has a player option after this year. He can opt in for like $47 million. And maybe he'll do that. Maybe he'll go somewhere where they'll offer him a contract extension. But you might, like, I heard people saying that you would have to attach an asset to Trae Young to trade him, which is absurd to me. I can't believe that for a second that would be the case, but his value is so low right now. Number one, because it's pretty obvious he's not a winning player. So, like, what team really wants to take him on? And number two, because not a lot of teams need point guard position. Point guard is the deepest position in the NBA. So there's not a lot of teams that need him.
And Trae specifically is like you're playing Trae Young basketball if you have Trae Young. That, like, this is not a malleable player that can kind of fit on any team. You got to live with the ups and downs of what comes with him right there. I have a couple teams that did pop to mind. I thought about it more.
Did you hit the trade machine?
I did a little bit. I didn't go the full details of these. I just kind of thought off the top of my head a little bit. Why would the Clippers not take a chance on Trae Young? Here's my pitch. They obviously have traded the draft picks that they have. They've aligned the contracts with James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. In this case, I think James Harden is the swap partner here. And I think Atlanta, that's worth taking. We've seen.
I'll stop you right there. James Harden's better and impacts winning more than Trae Young. So why are you doing that? You're becoming a worse team if you're the Clippers.
Because this is my sell, is they've had this drop dead time for the James Harden, Kawhi Leonard era that is coming to, on the same timeline. You're hitting this rebuild. They don't have their draft picks. There's no point in them being bad. What I do think Trae Young is made to do as a basketball player is be like a floor raiser. He'll get you around the 8 seed in that sort of play-in mix. I think he can do that for the duration of his career. I think there's value in the Clippers taking that as their next step and then figuring out what direction you actually want to go.
And then you would offer him the contract extension is what you're saying.
Yeah, you have to in that case.
So right now, I think this season and next season, James Harden is a way better player, makes you way better. Clippers are actually playing pretty well recently.
Yeah.
I believe won 7 of the last 8, something like that. And Kawhi Leonard's playing like a top 5 to 10 player in the league too. The reason you don't do that is because the we've seen from the last few seasons, like, yeah, without a great team around him, Trae Young had the Hawks as like a 10th, 9th perennial playing team in the East.
Yeah.
That's the East. If you're in the West, that's a 13th to 12th best team in the West. So there's no point. Like, yeah, your floor raising is better than maybe going all into like a complete tank mode, but there's just no point. He just doesn't move the needle for me at all if you're the Clippers.
You don't think him and Zubac is like a solid starting point right there? And obviously you need more. You got to figure it out. But like, I mean,
Starting point for what? Winning 15 to 20 games?
To being in the mix, like the Clippers, because
No.
the Clippers can't.
Trae Young doesn't play winning basketball. Like, Trae Young doesn't equate to wins. He just doesn't. If he's a high usage guy, you're not going to win a lot of games. You're just not. The proof is out there. We've seen it enough. That 2021 run is so far away at this point.
Here's what I disagree with about there is what you're right for the most part with it. Like, he's sort of I guess theoretical shooter. Like, everyone thinks he's a better shooter than he actually is. He's like a league average 3-point shooter with really bad shot selection. His best skill set is absolutely his playmaking. That he's a guy who I think doesn't get enough credit for what he can be as a lob thrower and the way that he can string together an offense right there. But he does dribble the crap out of the basketball. He does play super isolation heavy. There's things that are certainly red flags. He currently, in this current form of Trae Young, is not good enough offensively to make up for the defensive shortcomings. The red flags are there. What I still think Trae Young deserves a little bit of credit for is I do believe the dude wants to be the baddest man in the arena, in every arena he is. I do believe the guy cares that he's going to maximize his basketball. Like we were talking last night as a comparison to LaMelo Ball. LaMelo Ball is miles more talented than Trae Young. I am miles more confident that Trae Young's going to maximize his own individual abilities than LaMelo is to his like that. I think Trae Young cares.
Well, I mean, yes, but we're talking about like two losing players. Like, what's the point of comparing those two dudes? We're talking about two losing players who are consistently on the outside looking in.
All right, I'll throw another team at you then. The Toronto Raptors. Why would you not be interested in Trae Young? Because I think they should be.
I wouldn't hate it, but like again, their payroll is already ridiculous. I mean, they've one of the highest payrolls in the league for a lot of mediocrity, and they're having a good season. Defensively, they're great. When RJ Barrett plays, they're a pretty good team. But you're still like you're not really a threat in the East in my mind, and I just don't see that when bring Trae Young on already with such a high payroll, like you get rid of Emmanuel quickly. It just, again, doesn't move the needle for me. Like you're talking about a guy who would take away from Scotty Barnes' development, take away touches from RJ Barrett. Like the thing is, you're going to say everybody, and I'm going to say no to everybody because if I'm any team, why would I want to bring Trae Young in who's a losing player? I wish I had the number in front of me right now. The Hawks are, I believe they're 2-8 when Trae Young plays. They're so much better when he's off the floor. But defensively, they are by far the worst defense in the NBA when he's on the floor. An absurdly bad defensive rating, worse than the Jazz, who are, I believe, still the worst defense in the NBA. And they're average when he doesn't play. He is such a losing player. And I was in on him last year a little bit. Like, I thought the shot selection improved. He led the league in assists. I thought his decision-making was better. He wasn't as selfish. But defensively is so bad. It's not even like he can do anything or can try harder. It's not like a Luka or Jalen Brunson thing. It's on another level of small and slow on that end. And it's so bad that there's no, and he sucks up everything else offensively. There's no team I'm going to say, yeah, like I'd be excited about bringing on Trae Young because if you're taking him on, you're bringing on a losing player.
Can you explain to me the Wizards stuff to me? I don't understand them as a destination, even though they've emerged as seemingly the favorite in the rumor mill there.
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I don't really get it because I think it would take away from a lot of the young guys' development.
All those guys, yeah.
Yeah, but I do get it to the sense that they don't have a real on-ball point guard. Trae Johnson's really more of a 2, and maybe playing alongside Trae Young, more defensive attention towards him would help with Trae Johnson. Alex Sarr is having a great year. They have some good young pieces, so it's like maybe let's just expedite the rebuild in some ways because we can't just keep hoping on lottery luck. But again, you'd have to offer an absurd contract next season. Does he want to play for a team that's like a complete losing team right now? Even though I think their front office is good and they're on the right track, it just feels like it would warp their progress. I like the Wizards young guys. I just hope they hit the lottery rather than take on Trae Young to be like a mediocre team at best. But that's like the numbers would make up in terms of giving up CJ McCollum, who would go to the Hawks, obviously on an expiring contract. So the numbers would add up from that perspective. And then, of course, Chris Middleton's also on expiring. So I don't really understand it from the Wizards perspective, but that's been the name that's thrown out. What's your take on that?
I don't like it. I don't like it at all, and I don't really understand why that is the team being pushed here. I am in agreement with you. Like, I don't really see a team that like they're one Trae Young away, or that would be the.
Can I throw a team out to you?
Sure.
So the Mavs. But the only way I would do it if I'm the Mavs is if I'm not offering him a contract extension, because I don't want to be attached to him for 4 or 5 years. But I'd finish out this year, and then maybe I would, or maybe he would end up opting into his player option next year and then bet on himself. The Mavs obviously need a point guard, so they're natural because of that, even though Ryan Nembhard's been playing well. I do think he could help kill Cooper Flag. I don't think he would take touches away from him in that regard. Defensively, they're a pretty good defensive team already, so they're a team that's equipped to mask his concerns. And if he's there next year, you're relevant again, and you're kind of a fun, frisky playoff team. And then I wouldn't give him an absurd amount of money or a long-term contract because, again, he's not a winning player, so you don't want to attach yourself to that when you have young guys coming in and for Cooper Flag's development and all that. But I think the Mavs could be an interesting team, and you could send out – the trade machine was a little iffy when I was doing it, but you could send out Klay Thompson, who might want to go to not contending-ish team, but more of a team that's ready at this point, which is the Hawks, and you'd have to send out a couple other contracts. But what do you think about that?
I don't hate it. I guess the biggest appeal, like Anthony Davis, is the guy that you're sending out in there, and I will note Rich Paul has made it quite a few comments about Anthony Davis to Atlanta on his little podcast action there, which I do think is worth noting. I can see it. I get how you got there. I think if I'm the Mavericks, I'm just making every single decision about Cooper Flag and based around that. And I don't know if pairing him with Trae Young is something that I think improves that. I get where you're coming from with it. I kind of think like you got to take your lumps as Dallas right now and just figure things out, more of a long-term solution. But I don't know. I don't fully hate it. I get where you're coming from.
I check my phone. That's why you don't check your phone during shows. I check my phone. My group chat just making fun of my haircut. I think it's a decent haircut. But all right, I'm ready to keep moving.
All right. Any more NBA thoughts for you? By the way, we did get the update. Nikola Jokić targeting return. I believe I saw by the end of January is what.
Wow, just now that came?
Yeah, Shams Charania. Yeah, so shout out to that. I did have one more football thought that popped up while we started, or any other NBA you want to hit.
I think that's it. So we talked about Trae Young, the Thunder, and the Knicks a little bit. Like, we didn't go too deep on the Thunder. I will say that it's one of those similar situations where I don't think we should be worried. They are 9-5 against teams that are above 500. So it's not like they've been dominant against those teams. They only have 2 losses against teams that are below 500. So there's something there where they haven't been absurdly dominant against actual good teams that they would face in the playoffs. But Jalen Williams has just struggled. He's not playing good basketball right now at all. And that's, I think, coming back from injury might take some time. Isaiah Hartenstein's missed some time. Chet has regressed a little bit. They're also not shooting the ball well from 3. Yeah. But the thing about the
Thunder, they kind of didn't last year either.
Exactly. Like during the playoffs, they shot around 33% from 3 throughout the entire playoffs. And that was one of the worst marks of all playoff teams. So it was really their defense that carried them. And they were good enough from 2 and at the rim where they didn't need to be a good 3-point shooting team. But they're just not like, I wouldn't really expect them. I think they're going to be better than they've been the last couple of weeks, but I wouldn't expect them to be some great 3-point shooting team at any point. They're also forcing turnovers less, which is kind of like their bread and butter. That's how they create offense a lot of the times. So they're not getting out in transition as much. But I don't know what you think about the Thunder, if you're concerned at all. I'm not too concerned. I want to see how this month plays out. It's kind of just one of those mid-season lulls, and we can obviously retire the 73 win talk.
Yeah, I do think most of it I kind of boil down to like human nature of like when you are the defending champ, it's hard to keep your foot on the gas for all 82 games and just, be the best team from start to finish in that season. But I kind of think the response to that from the Oklahoma City front office, I think they need to make a trade, man. I think you bring in a little bit of new blood, and I understand like how tight knit, and I'm not saying disrupt the core by any means, but I'm looking for like a legitimate sniper on the perimeter. I'm trying to get like a Trey Murphy or a guy like that can like super change the outlook, and that's kind of on the higher end of what I'm thinking with it. But I do think if I'm Oklahoma City and I have all these collections of assets, it's time to get in the mix, man, that you don't just win back-to-back champions.
That's kind of I agree with you eventually, but you don't think it's a panic move at this point? Like just going through a bad slump in January?
I guess like I'll put it this way. I think they really need like a big shooter, like a guy like Isaiah Joe is obviously a sniper, but we've seen stretches where he kind of gets bullied defensively in the postseason.
Jason Wallace is a good. He has stretches where he's a really good shooter and he's an unbelievable defender. Aaron Wiggins, I still think can be a really good player. When he gets extended minutes,
they're all like good defined shooters. They don't have like we cannot leave that guy for a single second, like a prime JJ Redick or a guy like that you're just like the gravity that shooter can command. I think that they need to get in the business and find one of those guys.
Cousin Nicky checking in saying Lakers update. Let's save it for Thursday. Do a little tease. Has been a lot to talk about since we've been on JJ Redick related stuff, LeBron, Lucas stuff. Austin Reeves has still been out. Let's save that for Thursday. We'll do some Lakers stuff. Your football stuff you wanted to hit? I didn't even know.
John Harbaugh and the Ravens have mutually agreed to part ways.
Wow.
Sam Oshtry, your live reaction, and was it the right decision from both parties?
He's the hottest guy on the market. Yeah, I mean, I don't know the inner workings of the Ravens as well, but I would say sometimes this happens. How 18 seasons. It's kind of like the Andy Reid and Philly thing. Like Andy Reid's a phenomenal coach. He had a lot of success in Philly, even though he didn't win a Super Bowl. But when it was time at the end, it was time, and they both parties have gone on to be really successful. It kind of feels like that departure with John Harbaugh and the Ravens, where John Harbaugh actually won them a Super Bowl and has had a lot of success. Hasn't got over the hump recently. It felt like his relationship with Lamar Jackson was fraying a little bit. So it might just be a time and a moment for both those teams to go separate ways. John Harbaugh will be all right. He'll have any job. Every single job that's open, he will be he'll be called about. Maybe it'll be the Raiders because they have the #1 overall pick, Fernando Mendoza. I hope it's not the Giants because John Harbaugh is an unbelievable coach, and I don't want him to be in the division. But yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised by it. I do think you're right. Like, this is the timing thing. He's been there forever. And I'm very curious to see. We're certainly going to hear some of these leaks as far as the him and Lamar relationship. And they've already kind of started to make their rounds out there. I think they're going to be just fine. I think like this is probably a bet if we're going to rework things around Lamar and really go for this. And I think that's probably the right call as a franchise that in general, while John Harbaugh is an excellent coach, it's harder to find, an acceptable, or it's harder to find a high-level quarterback than it is an acceptable head coach. And I think that's sort of the gamble that's being made here, but we'll see. But you're absolutely right.
But then you think about it from the Ravens side, that's the best coaching job for all the coaches that are available right now. Like Kevin Stefanski is obviously the biggest name on the market. Yeah, he could easily land that job, and that would be great for the Ravens.
Yeah, interesting. But I think that's going to just about do us today. Did want to wrap up with a quick football talk there. But any final thoughts from you, Sam Oshtry?
Nah, it's going to be back and rolling, and we'll have another great show on Thursday. So let's go on.
Yes, sir. So we'll be back at it on Thursday, back in full swing now that it is the new year, the holidays in the past here. Appreciate you guys for rocking with us today. If you have not already, make sure you're smashing a subscribe button wherever you're listening at, whether that is on Spotify, Apple Pods, on YouTube, through any of our socials. Make sure you're tossing a follow. Got a ton more to go down in the NBA world. Me and Sam will be back. Talk with you next time. Peace.